Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I'm actually pretty tickled pink. I have someone who I have had connection with for so many years, Matt Sweetwood. Thank you so much for joining. I have you on here. Actually, someone reached out, but as you reached out, I remember a year ago, I think I reached out to you, and it was after reading your book, just about your family and your journey, and it was so amazing. And I was like, oh, I've got to get you on. And I know that you're a leader with heart because we've been in the same circles for at least 5 years. I don't even know. So I'm just excited to have you on and have these conversations, Matt.
Heather, it is such a pleasure to be here. I just don't know how we didn't connect. I don't know how this didn't happen sooner, but everything happens when it's supposed to happen, right? I believe that.
It's so true. Well, so where are you right now anyway in your leadership journey?
Well, I'm in a very good spot on my leadership journey because I've managed to get myself out of New York and find myself in Miami. And given the times that are going on right now, I've led myself to a very, very good place. But actually, the seriousness, because, New York is a very challenged environment right now, and I'm sure it will be even, when this goes on. But I think from the most important part of my leadership experience, which is leading 5 kids as a single father, sole parent too, they're all grown. They're all graduated top colleges. They're all, most importantly, financially independent. So that part of my leadership journey, we are in really good shape because when the kids spring and everything is good, that's when life gets really, really good. From a business perspective, I got to exit my company a few years ago, built it into a $100 million business, exited, got a chance to write that book that you talk about, Leader of the Pack. And right now I'm running a startup here in Miami called LuxNow. And we're doing pretty well. We're a peer-to-peer marketplace like Airbnb, but for luxury. We have on our platform not only luxury homes, but we have luxury and exotic autos and yachts. So we're the only platform doing it in that area. It's a very exciting business. Miami is an amazing place to do that. So from a leadership perspective, I'm cruising.
I love that. Cruising. Ooh, I love Miami. We were able to go, my family and I went, actually it was my first time and all of us had gone, and I think my husband had gone, but none of us had gone. And we loved it. We've been to a lot of different beaches and my daughter and I were just like, oh yeah. And she's like, I want to go back. So
there's a vibe here. I just have a more important question. You let your husband go alone to Miami?
No, I think he had done that before we met. Maybe.
Yeah, I'll bet. Because, I wouldn't let him go to Miami. This is the place where, they always say what stays in Vegas, whatever, that thing. Miami, they may never come back. So.
Miami's beautiful and the women are beautiful. You're right. I know. It was interesting.
You said it. I didn't. There's 2 things they always say. This is where all the beautiful women are, and this is where shady people come to find sun.
Oh, I love that. So I'm curious to know, with your extensive leadership journey, what would those who you lead, what would they say about your leadership style?
Am I allowed to curse on this show or no?
Just not too harshly.
Not too harsh. Okay. I actually view this as a strength and a weakness. And I'm saying this as someone who's been a CEO of a company almost his whole life. I think that for me, the way I've treated staff and we're in a time right now where, there's a lot of racial strife and stuff like that. For me, staff always didn't matter who you were, I always viewed staff like my family. And in fact, some of my best writings, I've written hundreds of articles literally, and some of the most popular ones are talking about parenting and leadership, and how similar they are, leadership at business and parenting at home. As a matter of fact, I have an article that was featured best of the day on LinkedIn. It's what's the difference between great parenting and great leadership. My conclusion, of course, is that they're the same. So I think that my staff would really talk about me, even the ones maybe I let go, would talk about me very positively. But it's a strength, right? Because you have a staff that really likes you and thinks that you're a good leader and all of that stuff. But one of the things that I would say is a weakness in there is, and I've been told this by many people, or I shouldn't say I've been told by many people. I've looked at other examples of leaders who've done amazingly well in their life. And I think sometimes I'm too easy on staff. I'm too humanistic with staff. And sometimes in a CEO position, you have to be a little more ruthless. And I every time I say that to myself, the name Mike Bloomberg comes to mind. And I'm not saying this in a political way. I'm not talking about his political career. I'm talking about his career as, CEO of Bloomberg, whatever, Enterprises, whatever it is. He had a reputation for being ruthless. Like, you leave his company, he would, or say you're going to leave, he would have you removed, thrown out the window, never speak to you, that kind of thing again. And he has a long-standing reputation. During his political campaign, obviously, a lot of people try to hurt him, ex-employees coming out and talking about it. But he became a billionaire, and I don't have that many zeros, after my name. And I look at a lot of the pioneers, and I'm not saying this that I want to be like them, but I just think it's an interesting study on leadership, is to find the balance between having your staff love you and hate you, and what's the right mix to find the most success. It's something that I deal with all the time. I'm sorry to take that question in that direction, but I really, for me, I think that's sort of the interesting point. So my staff would say that for the most part, that I was a good guy. I was the guy they could come talk to. Even though I was CEO, my door was always open. I dealt with them on a personal basis. I knew their stories. I do that today at LuxNow, the company that I'm running now. But I sometimes wonder whether I should have been a whole lot harder, and maybe I would have found more success. I don't know, or maybe more balance. I don't know.
That's interesting. I think that balance, that is a struggle that most leaders have. And often when I talk about leadership with heart, people immediately think that it's just the squishy stuff and it's just all the love and the tender care. It is love and the tender care, actually. But love and tender care is also expressed in different ways. Ron, the CEO of Service Express, who built his company to some tremendous growth too, he talks about this idea of kind of correction, like love and correction.
Of course.
So there's you have to be able to help people self-correct, help people correct in their path, and so and sometimes it comes off. It shouldn't ever come off super harsh, and it shouldn't come off ruthless, but it should definitely come off pretty strong, because they need to be clear that the correction is necessary in order to move them forward, the team forward, the business forward. So I do think there's a balance.
You're making my point right now. You're talking as almost if as a parent. Right there,
yes.
Everything that you just said really could have been applied to parenting.
Yes.
It's the difference between going to an employee and saying, what you did sucks, right? And you're terrible, right? Or going to them and saying, I think you're way better than that, and here's how you can be better. Those are two
totally different ways.
You're saying the same things, but
yep.
One way is a push forward, and one is a kick in the ass.
Yeah, and that latter way is I call it out of love. It's out of care. It's like because it could be, you could say that and it's just about your business, but you're probably not going to say that if it's just about your business. You're probably going to only say that as if the person is a human standing in front of you and you're treating them as an individual and you're seeing the greatness in them and they're falling short.
One of the gifts that God gave me, and He didn't give it to me, He let me learn it through two very, very difficult marriages and raising children and stuff, is I gained the ability of reading people, of trying to understand them or try to feel them. And I think being able to feel somebody and put yourself in their circumstance actually helps you lead them. Mm-hmm. Because if you push on the wrong buttons or you don't communicate with them in a way that's meaningful to them, you're not going to accomplish your goal. So if you're talking to an employee who, for example, let's say they show up late a lot, but they're sitting there with 4 kids at home, single parent, they're not making as much money as they need to make. Maybe they're in sales, they, not whatever conditions, not doing. You have to treat that person differently than, let's say, a 21-year-old just starting young man comes into the company, and he keeps showing up late. One we're going to show compassion to, and one we're going to help make their life work if you want them. And the other is going to get his head banged on the desk a few times, and I'll hang him up on the coat rack and let him sit hanging on the coat rack for a little bit, because clearly his father didn't do what was necessary with him. So it is my job. But okay, obviously all metaphoric, but
Yes.
That's the idea. And you have to sort of get in there, get in everybody's head that you manage. And I think that's being compassionate, and I think sometimes when you're too soft, and this actually I struggle with, sometimes when you're too easy on an employee, you enable them to fail, right? There's a really like a great tweetable, quotable thing. I think being too easy on a poorly performing employee enables their failure. And then the failure becomes yours. And so you have an obligation as a leader to correct people, obviously in a kind way, never in a demeaning way. But that is your obligation. And if you don't do that, the failure is yours.
Love it. And I think that's true. I really do. I still think that's for me, when I talk about leading with heart or care and love, that's just the ultimate expression, because I'm not allowing you to be the lesser version of you. I'm expecting more, and I'm going to hold you accountable. And guess what? I would expect you to do the same for me as a member of my team, even though I lead the team. So there's kind of like a mutual accountability that goes into it. So,
as a leader, I'm not a big book reader, even though I wrote a book myself, of course. But I read a book called Relentless. The author, his escapes me. He was a famous trainer of sports figures and stuff like that. And he said a couple of things in there that I keep in mind. Is that your job as a leader is to never let your level go to the level of your staff. You have to bring them to your level. So that's the goal, is you bring everybody to your level. But then he adds one more thing. When they get to your level, then raise your level and then bring them up again. And that's how you build the biggest and best of enterprises.
Love it. Relentless.
I mean, those are memes and those are words, and they actually, sometimes the meme culture, I mean, don't get me wrong, I watch memes and laugh my ass off all the time. But I'm just saying the meme culture sometimes is too trite. It's too surface. But there's a deeper, if you actually take that in, there's a deeper concept in there to always keep pushing yourself to be better. Never allow your standards, your morals, your ideology in any way to be compromised, right? Your principles always have to stay in charge. If you're the leader, you're leading the company, you're responsible for failure or success. Make sure you don't fail because you lowered your level. Simple as that.
Yeah, I love that. No, never stooping. It was a kind of a value or something a mom taught me very early is just never to stoop. And even today, if my kids go, well, so-and-so and so-and-so, they also didn't get a good grade, or so-and-so and so-and-so, they didn't do this thing. And I go, And what do I say about that? And they go, never compare yourself to the worst. And that's exactly right. That is the value. Always raise the bar. Be the bar and raise it.
Right.
So
that's right. Exactly. I like that. You said that way more succinctly than I did. Be the bar and raise it. And keep raising it, right? Okay, I love that. That's great. That's really good stuff. I'm stealing that.
Love it. I love your sense of humor. Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm curious to know, because I don't remember this coming out from the book, but it's been a while since I've read it. But where does your drive to lead come from? What is it that makes you keep, basically being a serial entrepreneur, starting companies and leading people? Where does that drive to lead come from?
I think some of it is internal, is kind of the way I'm constructed. I think some of it is the situation that I went through, sitting there with 5 little kids to take care of, a business in turmoil, all sorts of wild stuff, waking up every day and saying, oh my gosh, your life is a total failure and you need to pull yourself out of this. And I think that success becomes a habit. And so when success is a habit, you're just driven every day to make sure that you end that day more successful than the day before. And for me, that gives me my high. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble. I'm a vice-free man, but my vice is really, finding success. And I just, it's what makes me complete as a human being. And if I feel like I failed at something, I really take a look deeply at that and try to overcome that. And so it's just an internal drive. And, as a professional speaker, everybody always has their sort of their catch lines and stuff. I'm sure you have them. And one of the things that I always say to people, it's usually the way I end a talk or I get it in there somewhere, is I always say, how badly do you want it? Right? If there's something in your life that you want, I mean, if you want it badly enough, you're going to make it happen. I'm going to tell you a story. I actually was giving a talk in New York, in Manhattan. It was like at the Microsoft Center there or something. And in the audience were about 100 middle-aged Ivy League graduates who were unemployed. So they all had gone to Wharton and Harvard and Brown and Cornell, and that's how they formed the meeting. It was people who were like mid-level managers, vice presidents, whatever at this level, who during that period of time had become unemployed, and they brought them all together. And I was giving the keynote speech on, actually the talk was on how to use social media to help you find a job. So in the middle of this talk, I went to them and I said, you can't have everything in your life that you want, but if there is something you want, like a job or this particular job, you're going to do whatever it takes to get it, right? You're going to do whatever. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was a woman in the front row, and she's just sitting there. You can't see it because we're audio only, but she's just like shaking her head, like halfway through my talk, right? Like for half the talk, she's just shaking her head. And as a speaker, you're looking at the audience, you want to see their energy and stuff. Most people nodding, looking, watching intently, but she's just sitting there shaking her head at me. So finally, I just stopped the talk, and I'm like, I could see her name tag, whatever, Miranda. Why are you shaking your head at me? She goes, it's not true. You can't have anything you want. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I thought that maybe, instead of, and these are pretty high level people, at least in their own mind. She's like, I thought I would be a doctor, but I can't really be a doctor. I wanted to do that in my life. I could see she's very sad. I feel the pain coming from, that's one of those moments you feel the pain.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't be a doctor. I go, Miranda, you're completely wrong. I said, if you want to be a doctor right now, you can be a doctor. Still shaking her head. I'm like, listen, if you want it badly enough, what you're going to do is you're going to leave this meeting. You're going to go to the Barnes & Noble across the street, and you're going to buy the MCAT book or whatever it is that you need to do to take the thing to get into test. You already have a degree. You already have your undergraduate degree. You just need to qualify for medical school. I said, so you're going to go study for the next year. I said, are you guys financially okay? She goes, yeah, we're okay. My husband, this. I said, see, so you don't even really have to work in order to earn a living. You don't in your case, so you have it even easier. But if you didn't, it didn't matter because you could just borrow money if you needed to. But in any event, you go right now, you go study, you go get yourself into medical school, and when you're 8 years from now, you will be a doctor. But you have to want that badly enough to give the next 8 years of your life to get there. Do you want it badly enough? And she sat there kind of like, I said, because what it really comes down to is that that's just a dream. And you don't really want that badly enough. What you really want, I'm guessing, is to get back into a job like you had so you can maintain your family, maintain the lifestyle that you had, enjoy time with your husband, raise your kids, do whatever it is you're doing, and just do something that you're comfortable doing. Is that not correct? I'm like, yeah. So that's the thing you should want badly enough, and let's focus on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry for telling that long story.
Helping them identify. Well, I think that's good to help you. Helping people identify.
But to me, that's the answer to your question is, where does it come from? It comes from just wanting it badly enough. Mm-hmm. I just want to be successful badly enough. I don't want to wake up. I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to be a failure in front of my kids. I want to, when I retire someday and from now, I don't want to be sitting there figuring out how I'm going to pay the bills, or after what just happened now, I'm definitely not ending up in a nursing home. And, right, we're all like, whoa.
Exactly.
And, so, I want success. That's it. Drive for success comes from within. Don't want to fail. Want it badly enough to do anything it takes.
Was there ever a time, was it like, did it start when you were like 3? I'm just curious, like, when were you just like super competitive as a tiny kid and then just like, it just always stayed there with you? Or did it start at some point? Did you feel like it was like, boom?
Wow, what a question. For me as a child, I didn't know it at the time because it was before they gave labels, but I had ADHD. I mean, I couldn't read, I couldn't sit in class, I couldn't do anything, but I was highly competitive. And those two things actually didn't work very well together. They only worked well together later in life when I got handed more than any human being basically can handle and how to take care of them all, and then became a functional ADHD.
Yeah.
But so I think that the seeds were there because I always was competitive. For me, winning is, I like to win. And I say this all the time. I say, I always win. But I put a caveat on that. If I want it badly enough, I'm going to win.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And my saying. So I think the seeds were there, but I think it was when I faced such difficulties in life and other people's lives were on the line. The 100 employees in my company depended on me to figure out what to do in my business. And if I didn't do it, we are going to have 100 people out of work and, a catastrophe. And at home, I had 5 little kids looking up at me. I was overweight, 300-pound guy, 5'10". My life was a mess. Wife walked out. Kids were messed up. Business collapsing. All sorts of crazy stuff going on. I'm not even getting into it here.
Yep.
Read my book, Leader of the Pack, and I talk about it. And I sat there and looked at myself and said, you're losing. You're losing big time. And you have no clue what to do, Matt. And you better figure it out really fast. And I had to find the courage and dig myself out. But in a sense, I did it for them. I did it for the staff, and I did it for my kids. And eventually that habit became my own habit. And it's just now I'm just full steam ahead all the time. And God granted me good health and good physical strength, which you can't really be successful. This is a big thing for me, by the way. You can't be successful unless you're in good shape anyway. So that's a whole nother discussion.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I agree. I know what you mean. Okay, so tell her, this is that time where we ask, where a time when you maybe, weren't the best version of you. And I know you're going to be very direct with this, so I wouldn't expect anything less. So basically, share a story, as specific as you can, about a time when you were not the best version of you as a leader. And then what did you do to come out of that situation?
I'll share a little bit of a shocking story from my past. It was a time when things were not going very well with my wife, the mother of those 5 children. And I put myself in denial. In other words, things were not going very well at home. She was not treating the children very, very well. In fact, she was abusive to the children. And I just put my head in the sand and ate myself to 300 pounds to soothe myself. I was, in a way, it was very hard for me to run my business because I was so upset. So I was sort of letting the business slide. So I'm sitting there with my kids being abused at home, the house in a wreck. I'm abusing my body. I'm not running my business properly, and my life is collapsing. And of course, the end result of that was sort of this moment where my soon-to-be ex-wife at the time, mother of the kids, calls me on the phone at work, and she's crying hysterically on the phone. I remember this like this is a long time ago. This is almost 25 years ago. Called me on the phone. No cell phones at that time, by the way. Or maybe I did. I think maybe I had that Motorola flip phone. Sorry for diverting. Anyway, calls me on the phone, crying hysterically, and she says, I did something terrible, and she says the kid's name, and then hangs the phone up. So I had one of these moments, ran out of the building. We were building something, doing some construction in the building that I was moving offices. It's crazy time. I got in the car, zoomed home, literally through all the red lights, through everything, got in, ran into the house. And she was sitting, I remember she was sitting at the kitchen table, and my oldest daughter was standing there with my oldest son, and she was holding a rag to his bleeding head. And I had one of those moments as a parent when I said to myself, this is your fault. You know that she's not well. You know that she's doing this to the kids, and you've just ignored this. And look at what just happened to your child who was sitting there. And then I remember she started screaming at me, "This is your fault," like yelling at me, telling me it's my fault that she did that to the kid. And she did all of that. And we had one of these ugly scenes. And it was at that moment, that was like the rock bottom moment when I knew that was the worst version of myself. And to save these kids and to save my life, I needed to do something. Is literally, I remember just standing there, literally like she's screaming at me, cursing at me because she was a little bit unstable, particularly at that moment. And the kid's sitting there. Of course, I went over to my son and checked on him and stuff. And I'm sitting there in this surreal scene, like out of a movie, where your child is bleeding in front of you because the mother she actually threw a cup at him and hit him in the head with a cup, like a mug, a coffee mug, just grazed his head and skimmed his head. You're like, oh my God, what's going on? And you had to put all of this together. These 5 little kids, they were ages 18 months to 8 years old at the time. I was completely out of shape. The mother got up and left the house. I'm standing there with the kids. The business, there's like welding going on in my building. My business is like barely making it. It was just all too much to handle at that time. But that was it. It was like as hard a slap to the face as I could, put myself together. And, the end result is 20 years later, I have kids that all out in the world, all graduated top colleges, all financially independent, all of those things, business to $100 million, but, lost my hair and all sorts of things along the way. But that's the story. That's the low point. I think sometimes God wakes you up like that. So for me, that was the worst version of myself because I take total responsibility for that. Complete. It was totally my fault. I knew it was going on. As a matter of fact, a little bit after that happened, if you remember, there was a mother from Oklahoma who drowned her 5 kids in the bathtub.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I don't know if you remember the story. It's from a long time ago. It's a crazy story. She drowned them one after the other. And I thought to myself, fortunately, I was a little bit tougher than that guy because that's where it was going with my 5 kids. And I just thank God every day that didn't happen and gave me the strength to step in. But that's the worst version of myself. Fortunately, we never hit that low again.
And then from that perspective, because that's obviously, I talk a lot about self-leadership, and then my next book on the art of caring leadership, the whole first chapter is on self-leadership, because it is about, guiding ourselves in lots of different ways. And so, can you, what is it that you did to muster up the strength, courage, will, everything? I mean, so I know that thing happened and that was like a trigger for you. It was a pivot in your life. But, what did you do to try to gather? I know it took some time. It wasn't like certain things may have been overnight. And if it was, what was it that you did to make it overnight?
I think what it was, so at that moment, it happened during a period when she was moving out of the house. So I was sort of one of those dads from the 90s who, went to work, patted the kids on the head when they came home. You threw the ball to them. You took the family out to the Applebee's on the weekend kind of thing. And, I had to figure out how to become a father. And for me, this is the way I've approached everything in my life. I'm all about organization and order and doing things in the right way. So the way I pulled myself out is I said, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm lost. I'm lonely. I'm sad. I'm all these things. Great. We understand that. But let's start fixing things one by one. And that's essentially became a habit, and the way that you pull yourself out is that you have what seems to be an unsurmountable problem or an unsurmountable set of circumstances. But almost everything, God never gives you more than you can handle. And the way to get out of all of this is to literally succeed one step at a time. If you're scared, is just do one little courageous act, because that little act of courage leads to more courageous acts. And you just do them one by one by one by one. And sure enough, after a period of time, it's sort of like the dieting approach, right? You want to lose weight, having someone who's, how to lose weight and put himself in shape and all of those things. You don't lose all the weight in one day. What do? You each meal, you reduce what you eat. Each day, you do a little bit more exercise. You do a little bit more. Everybody knows how to do it. Doing it, of course, a different story. But, that's the step-by-step process. And getting it out was like that. I looked at the kids. The kids weren't brushing their teeth at night. She didn't care. She wasn't having them do it. So it's like, okay, 5 kids. Tonight, we're going to brush our teeth. They're going to fight. We're going to wrestle. We're going to do this, but we're going to do this 5 nights in a row. And eventually the older ones are going to brush their teeth on their own, and they're going to show the younger ones, and we're going to get them to brush their teeth. Then we're going to get them to put their shoes away. Okay. And then we're going to get them to do their homework, and then we're going to get them to clean their room. Now 6 months have gone by. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we're going to get them through high school, and we're going to teach them how to drive, and we're going to get them through college, and then they're going to go off and get big jobs and live their lives happily ever after. And in the middle, you're going to build their self-esteem, because that's part of the process of doing that. And you treat it like a business, and you do it step by step by step. Like, went into work. It's like, okay, we're going to reinvent this business, and we're going to fix it one step by one step. We're going to get rid of the product that's no good. We're going to change our marketing strategy. We're going to go after a different market, one step by step by step by step by step. And you eventually solve your problems if you keep at it and you want it badly enough.
Wow. It's interesting because a lot of the stuff I talk about, the TED Talk I did last year on transforming adversity into opportunity, all of it just becomes real prevalent and needed right now, those messages. And so much this, the process you just talked about is, I think the process many of us who go through adversity any times of our lives where we have to try to pick up the pieces, it may appear even overnight to most people, but it's very methodical to us. And we stick to the process. The other thing I noticed that was similar between you and I is that I don't know if it's a defense mechanism, but I am looking forward. I'm a forward-thinking person in the way that I don't get stuck in adverse situations. I don't get stuck there. Doesn't mean I'm never there. It means that I'm not stuck there. If I'm stuck there, I'm only stuck for a very short period of time. It's because I'm constantly looking forward. I'm always putting something in front of me that I'm moving towards. And when I do that, the step-by-step approach, really helps. So people are like, well, how do you feel? I'm like, well, yeah, I don't feel great in this particular thing, but my mindset is all right. It's because I protect my mindset. I focus forward thinking. Like, there's certain things I'm doing all the time to make sure that I can bounce things off of me much more easily than most people. Because I built those things up very early as a kid, kind of probably like your kids have. They built up this resilience muscle that was really super strong. And they have all these strategies that they use to kind of continue to bounce things off around them in life. And they don't take them as hard as they may have because they had all that stuff early on as children.
Yeah, I think that you actually, right there in the last 30 seconds, laid down the actual key to being successful as a human being is, and I'll say it a little less eloquently than you, which is to not dwell on the past, not get stuck in depression over situation, and always move forward. My dad had an expression. You're going to laugh when I give you this one. My dad had an expression that used to drive my mom crazy because it would come across as a little bit insensitive. And he would just simply, whatever happened, he would look at you and go, next. Like, she would sit there, I don't like the way you said this, blah, blah, blah. She'd say, okay, I'm sorry. Next.
Yeah. Like, we're past it. Yeah.
We're over it past. Let's move on. Let's not dwell on. And that, while it may be cruel in a personal relationship, because sometimes you have to soothe people's feelings, but that next concept, to me, is really the key to success, is to continue, pivot, move forward, just keep going. And I love hearing you say that, because to me, that's why you're successful. There's no doubt, because we can all talk about things that happen, crap that happened in our lives. I guarantee you did not have a smooth, luxurious sail through life. I'm sure, because that's the way God makes it happen. That's why you are the person you are. So, that next, and not dwelling, and then step by step, all of that, you and I were brother, sister here for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Oh, I love that. Okay, so I'm curious, for those who are listening right now, what would be a couple pearls of wisdom, maybe just the last couple things you might leave them with leaders who may be at a crossroads? They might just need a little extra motivation to get in, because this role of leadership is tough. What might be a couple of pearls of wisdoms you would leave them with? Okay,
we'll keep it a little bit meme-ish too, because the people can write them down. So the expression, you're going through and a lot of people going through a tough time now because the economy got flipped upside down and so on. You've heard the expression, this too shall pass. Okay, everybody's heard this expression. I don't exactly believe in that expression. It's only part of the expression. It's this too shall pass if you make it pass. So if you just sit there and just let it come at you, you're right, it'll be over, but you're going to be over in a lot worse shape than when you started. So when you go through crisis, one of the key aspects of getting through a crisis successful is to anticipate and act aggressively. And a lot of people, when stuff happens around them, riots are happening and looting and whatever you want to, COVID and shutdowns and North Korea is going to launch a missile. I don't know, whatever bothers you, okay? Yep. Whatever is going to happen. You have to anticipate. And this is part of being a leader. You won't always anticipate right. But I can almost guarantee sitting there during a downturn or calamity and doing nothing will lead to disaster. At my company right now, when they started talking about, they might shut things down, I reacted so quickly. I'm like, okay, maybe they will shut things down, maybe they won't shut things down. But right now we have a month-to-month rent. I'm paying whatever X amount of dollars. Yeah. My staff is not ready for this. Before it even happened, we pivoted. We were working from home literally 2 weeks before they shut everything down. Our tech was working. We had video conferencing set up. We had our weekly meeting set up. I had task lists going out to the people. I made believe like this, we were going to be working from home forever almost. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, they shut everything down. We were ready to go. We sort of didn't miss a beat. I already had a business plan for what we were going to spend money on, what we were not going to spend. Okay, so if it didn't happen, we go back to the way it was. But I just try to anticipate. And I think that that's a really important lesson. And I think that I've always found success when I've acted aggressively and anticipated. Now, sometimes you miss, right? And you rely on your experience and your gut, trust your gut. That's why you're in the lead, you're leading, and go for it. So to me, that's pearl of wisdom number one. Okay. And number two, pearl of wisdom, we touched on it before. And I think it's particularly true now since none of us are walking to work, driving, getting out, getting in the subway, whatever it is that you do. I am a humongous, and I got to use the word humongous. I am a humongous believer. Probably a lot of people, that's like an old-fashioned word. I just dated myself, but okay. I am a huge believer in physical conditioning is the foundation for emotional and mental strength. If you are not in good health and good physical strength, good physical conditioning, you are going to weaken mentally and emotionally and not be able to run your company. Now, I'm not saying you need to be an Ironman triathlete, but if that beer belly is, stuck to the chair and your butt's sliding over the edge of the chair, you're breathing hard going upstairs and you're tired and you're not at your best. And I liken this, my own circumstance. When I was in that terrible shape, I couldn't run my family and my business and work the 16 hours a day that I needed to do all of that. But I always like to use a sports analogy, because people really like sort of think about what goes on in a sports game. If I use like even football as an example, if you have two teams that are evenly matched, they're playing the game. When one team tires physically, they don't get overrun. Like the other team doesn't start. It just doesn't happen like that. What happens is they make mental mistakes. They commit a penalty. They miss a coverage. They forget the play. This is the first thing that happens when you physically weaken. And the exact same thing applies in business. When you are physically weak, you're not there to handle the stress. Because when you lead a company, you are always under stress. And physical strength gets you through that. That's why I always thank God for giving me physical strength and putting myself in shape. There's no way I would have raised 5 little kids on my own, ran a business like that, a crazy business, 100 employees in an up and down technology challenge industry if I wasn't physically strong. I would have collapsed, I would have made mistakes, and I would have been a failure. So physical conditioning is the foundation for mental and emotional strength. That's really my big tip number 2 of the day.
Oh, thank you for that. And I agree with that. And of course, yes, the idea of making things happen, making things, not settling and making it. Don't settle for limitations that others might put in front of you. Remove those and remove all the barriers. And
go with your gut. Idea. Go with your gut. You're going to be responsible, failure or success. So you better take the bull by the horns.
Love it. Well, this has been great. Anybody who's listening right now, I hope I've been writing a lot of notes furiously. So if you have, you think it's interesting and this has been enlightening, please do share this with others. That's how we kind of move up on the algorithms for all the podcasts. There's a lot of leadership podcasts out there. I think there's something special here. Don't forget to leave a review on the show, because that also helps put it at the top of the list. But thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. This has been great, Matt. I had a lot of good laughter and a couple little tears too. So. Appreciate you.
Yeah, well, if we accomplish that, and certainly people can reach out to me. I'm on Twitter at msweetwood. msweetwood.com is my website. And I always say, if people reach out to me, I'm always glad to talk to them. As you know, I respond to my social media pretty actively. Just get me at msweetwood, and I'm happy to give advice or just hear what people have to say.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast, and take care of you.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.